The rise of women in motorsports has reached another high point last weekend with 15-year-old Chiara Battig's historic performance at the top level of single-speed karting. Hello and welcome, fellow motorsports fans. As you can tell, I am rather excited about this Swiss girl's performance at the European Karting Championship, and I will tell you all about it in our weekly karting report. But of course, there has also been some junior formula action as well as the Ginetta Juniors season opener to get through, so let's not waste any more time. GB4 is back. I definitely did not make the mistake of assuming GB3 was on this weekend as well, just because it always has been. That would be incredibly embarrassing for a channel like this. The grid has grown yet again, and even more surprisingly has produced a pretty competitive mid-pack this time around, something that certainly wasn't always true in the past seasons. Elite Motorsport definitely dominated the headlines with both Isaac Phelps and Ari Banzal, and even Alex Catoulas was consistently at the front despite being a bit off from his teammates. In Phelps' case, this was about what I expected after his stellar Ginetta Junior season last year, to be honest. On the other hand, Banzal came entirely out of nowhere for me. I actually had to check my notes to even confirm I had seen him race in the past, and indeed I have across multiple mid-tier karting championships and some one-off F4 rounds last year. He just never achieved anything of note before. So this is definitely a pleasant surprise. I always like to see some Indian guys come through the ranks. Lendra Junkos was a consistent best of the rest and was in prime position for a great result in the reverse grid race. Unfortunately, a late race crash did end that dream for him, while Alex Berg showed that he can control a race when given track position, even if he is typically more of an anonymous midfielder, to be entirely honest. Then I had my eyes on Stefan Boschanyev, apparently warming up to single-seaters here ahead of his GB3 campaign. And I have to say, he actually did pretty well, all things considered, even if he is a little older and more experienced than most of his competitors. Definitely looks like a guy who could grow into this championship quickly. The step to GB3 will probably still be a cruel reality check. Last but not least, shout out to Ava Dobson. The 16-year-old American has shown some promise while racing in the US, but has really struggled in Europe last season and has apparently found some better form this time around. Sure, definitely nothing great or anything, but she did go from back marker to pretty well established in the midfield, so some neat progress for our potential F1 Academy candidates here as well. Unfortunately, the rest of the female runners were about as bad as expected. I teased it in the intro, I have decided to include the Ginetta Juniors this year because, let's face it, it is as much of a feeder series as any F4 series out there, even if there aren't actually driving open wheelers yet. The big players on the team front here are R-Racing and Elite Motorsports by quite a bit, while naturally the Red Bull Juniors Rocco Coronel and Scott Lindblom are probably the most interesting drivers for you guys. Although, between Freddie's younger brother Alfie Slater and a bunch of great karting graduates, there is certainly a lot more talent to unpack here over the course of the season. Personally, I rate Rocco Coronel very highly, and I am thus very pleased to see him with 2 comfy wins and another good race in the first one despite a bit of a rough start. Together with returnee Alfie Slater, the pair looked like the favourites so far, even if Slater's experience advantage will of course fade considerably as the year goes on. And just to keep that in mind, he wasn't all that special last year, more of a midfielder to be honest. Scott Lindblom on the other hand had some issues in the racecraft department, although he was also wiped out by Slater in race 2. Either way, the pace was definitely there for the R-Racing trio. Fred Green deserves a mention as the leading driver for Elite Motorsports and one of the better graduates coming from the British national karting scene, even if again he had some major issues in the very intense scraps the series produces. And while the power dynamics will take some time to unfold, I do want to shout out a couple more drivers to watch going forward. First of all, Freddie Lloyd, British karting star, and out of these shoutouts, the one who already had a chance to impress considerably, charging through the field multiple times with ease despite racing for the usually not so great Fox Motorsport. Harry Bartle you might be also familiar with from our karting segments. While the results weren't quite there yet, I'd also bet on him to impress a bit more over the year. And last but not least, a driver who I'm probably more optimistic about than I should be, but I just can't help it. Catherine E, the Thai girl who has shown glimpses of potential throughout the bits of karting I've seen her do. Now, don't get me wrong, she was rather horrible this weekend and a firm backmarker despite the huge grid, but I still want to believe that she will eventually get there. Sure, not as a win contender or anything, but maybe we can see her put up a good fight in the midfield in the not too distant future. Either way, if you're interested in the female side of racing, I would suggest to keep an eye on her as well. F1 at Suzuka unfortunately produced an incredibly dull race. We desperately need some sort of DRS zone leading up to that chicane. But at least we did get some Kimi Antonelli records on the board as the youngest race leader and race lap record holder. I do want to point out that it is still a bit weird to me that these somewhat meaningless records, it has to be said, seemingly convinced people of his talent more than, you know, the 5+ years of excellence he has displayed already. Couple storylines to come out of the Red Bull stable, of course. Most importantly, Liam Lawson, still looking a bit forgettable now in the V Cup or whatever they call it this year. Looks a bit like his confidence has been absolutely shattered by his short stint in the main team. And that is despite Yuki Tsunoda very much proving that the Red Bull proper is indeed just not that great a car for mere mortals to drive, even if Verstappen is capable of producing miracle runs like that pole lap. On the other side of the V-Cup garage, Isaac Hadjar is really coming in hot to show the world what he is capable of. I said in the past, his speed is undeniable and that his biggest weakness far and away has always been his mental game, and he seemingly improved big time on that front. If he can keep up that in adversity as well, he might just be a proper threat for that best of the rest slot this year, which is quite incredible for a rookie, to be honest. The other thing I want to touch on is Alex Albon's newfound team leader qualities. Like many people, I thought there was a good chance of him being a bit exposed this year by having a proper teammate like Carlos Sainz instead of the Latifis and Sargents of this world. Instead, it has only helped him to find yet another gear while also clearly taking a bit more charge of his own destiny, as can be heard on the team radio. Don't get me wrong, I think Sainz will come back from this somewhat shocking start to the year and put up a good fight, but I think we have seen enough to confirm that Albon is indeed an above average driver in F1 at the moment. As always, I don't want to talk about F1 too much, so instead let's get to our title story in our quick weekly karting report. I've still got to tease you just a minute as we will begin with the OK Juniors, where we had both Noah Baglan dominance, Dean Hugendorn as the ever-consistent man in P2, and I was also happy to have William Collegia on the podium yet again, thanks to a last lap overtake past Bosco Arias. The Baglan versus Hugendorn battle is really evolving into a little bit of a raw pace versus consistency battle when looking at the year holistically. Baglan may look like the even bigger talent, but Hugendorn is the sort of driver I'd back to take home titles at the moment. Last week's winner, Eiley Kreisen, did make the most of a bit of an unlucky weekend by charging through the pack in the final, all the way up to P6 behind Henry Domain. The latter, by the way, also in fantastic form all year so far. And as the old saying goes, it isn't the weekends where everything goes perfect that define champions. More often than not, it is making the most of a not so perfect situation, and Kreisen really fit that bill here. Shout out to our rookie class with both Nikita Lyubimov and last year's Mini Group 3 dominator Daniel Miron Lorente, or now just going by Daniel Miron I think, but it'll take a couple years for me to get used to that. Both had a decent run in the final to finish in the top 20, even if Lyubimov was mostly going backwards. Especially for DML, I do want to point out that racing for CRG probably isn't helping his cause. This is entirely speculation, but I'd still love to see him drive for one of the Kart Republic satellites just for science. In the OK Seniors, Chiara Battig, for true Swiss-German pronunciation, there probably needs to be a couple in there. Anyway, she has absolutely dominated the headlines for me, which says quite a lot when looking at how incredibly strong the top 10 to 15 bracket in this class is this season. She put it on pole on Friday, kept up the form across her heats to be on pole for a super heat, only to then get taken out by Kenzo Craigie while battling for said lead. And despite all of this, she drove an excellent final, fighting against all the huge names and F1 affiliated drivers from lights to flag to take home P5 in the end. While she might be a tiny bit disappointed with the end result, this is easily the single best karting performance from a woman I've ever seen, to be honest. Really hoping this gives her some extra confidence going forward, enabling her to be at the sharp end more often. Talking about the overall win, James Anagnostiidis came out an unlikely winner ahead of Dries van Langendonk, while Champions of the Future dominator Christian Costoya slowly but surely worked his way to complete the podium ahead of Tibor Amekers, albeit aided by a penalty for Felipe Sala. What a list of names at the front of this one, despite many key retirements. And just to keep that in mind, Battig was fighting on merit with these people all weekend long. Quick shout out for Jacopo Martinezzi, who was without a doubt the other big star of this race, charging from the mid-pack all the way to P2 with more than enough pace and time left to take the victory until his tyre gave up on him on the very last lap in utterly heartbreaking fashion. Still an epic run, and nobody can take that away from him. Who impressed you the most over the weekend in karting and elsewhere? Please let us know down in the comments along with all your other opinions, of course. I have not forgotten about the karting explainer video, but I never quite know when I have enough time to squeeze in more than the weekly video. Also, a huge thank you guys for finally breaking the 1000 subscribers on the channel. It has been an absolute pleasure to grow this channel into a proper feeder series community over the past 2 years, and I know we can make it even bigger. This means you can now also support my work directly by becoming a channel member, but really only do so if you somehow happen to have too much money for whatever reason. Either way, I very much thank you all for watching, and I also hope to catch you in the next one where I'll somehow have to squeeze in 9 different Formula Racing series, so watch this space.